I want to talk about my reflections on the Murphy article. I haven't done that so much. I've talked about, the critique part a little bit with these other articles that we've examined. I haven't talked so much about the reflection piece because, that's something so personal. And let me just say to you again, at least I've tried to in various ways, but also I've said to your nursing faculty, those reflections, you guys are just doing amazing job with that. Very many of you. So, in what way, right? I say something like that, it has to be qualified. I have to explain why I'm making that judgment. You're drawing together bits and pieces from the text, from the biblical text sometimes, from the articles we've read, from your own nursing practice, that that go in directions that this was the point of the reflection piece, that you'd be able to go in directions and inform my thinking about the biblical text and certainly about these articles. Because you see things that I don't see. You make connections that I don't see. And that would be true even if we were all a bunch of Bible scholars sitting around and one person would make a connection that another person doesn't. And that's just kind of the nature of the academic enterprise. But because of what you bring to the table, because of your nursing practice, I'm really interested. That just opens up new vistas for me. And hopefully I've opened up a couple of new vistas for you along the way. But this time I thought I would share some of my own reflections. I thought it just might be prudent. So this guy Joseph that is called Barnabas, he gains this name as the son of encouragement for a reason, and Murphy reminds us of that, right? And notes that Barnabas, bar son, nabas, encouragement, son of encouragement. Is what the name means. So this guy Joseph, right? He was such an encourager that he became, and he's also thought of as an apostle. He's thought of as a prophet, a teacher. His influence was such that he got this kind of nickname as the son of encouragement. He got this nickname as, hey, this is the guy that's going to build you up. And we all like to be around people like that. So when I read the Murphy article and I see the way he constructs his argument to suggest connectivities between guys like Barnabas and Ananias, or between Barnabas and even Jesus, right? And Barnabas and Paul, of course. I say, here's one of those secondary characters, hint, that's in the Murphy article. Here's one of those secondary characters that has a large influence. And, sometimes we don't get recognition that is deserved, and sometimes it's not even that it's a matter of deserved or undeserved. It's just, we're just doing our jobs, right? Barnabas changes the narrative about himself, and Murphy helps me think about that and reflect on that, because that is Barnabas, and it's reflected in his actions. It's reflected in the things that he says and does. He brings that kind of ethos. He brings that kind of disposition to the table, and I think I need to be more of that person, right? So with that, it's something I knew, but as I read the Murphy article again, I think about Barnabas as an introducer. So he introduces Paul, right? He introduces Paul to this bunch of apostles and leaders there in Jerusalem, because Paul, who had been called Saul, another name change kind of thing, is a persecutor of the church, and he has vowed to get rid of this Christian bunch. But now he's had this experience with Jesus. He is transformed by it. He's transformed by the message of the gospel. And so that might cause people who knew him in the past or knew of him in the past, and now he's doing this, he seems to be on our side. That might make it seem like, wow, There's some kind of skullduggery going on here. There's some trickery. This guy is a hooligan of some sort, and he's pulling shenanigans on us, and he is going to rip apart the Christian community. We're going to be exposed. Barnabas is an advocate. Barnabas, and you know advocacy better than I probably. Barnabas introduces Paul. Barnabas has a later disagreement with Paul, and it's over this guy, John Mark. And Mark, who had been with Paul and Barnabas on their first so-called missionary journey, he forsakes them. He goes home. And so it comes time for the second missionary journey, and Barnabas says, hey, we need to take Mark with us. And Paul says, no, we're not doing that. He abandoned us the first time. How do we know he's not going to abandon us the second time? Barnabas has a good thing going with Paul. They're a team. They're in sync. You can see that certainly in up until like Acts 16, certainly in chapter 15, the great council there in Jerusalem in chapter 15. Barnabas is willing to put it all on the line for Mark and separates from Paul, and he and Mark go do their own apostolic work, and Paul then joins up with a guy named Silas and heads into their own apostolic work. Interestingly enough, later on in Paul's life, toward the end of his life, he writes and he encourages that Mark would come visit him while he's in prison in Rome, because it's a way of maybe saying, I was wrong about this guy, or he was immature, but he developed, he came through. Paul would not have so embraced Mark had the narrative not changed. Does it change because of Barnabas' influence? Very possibly could have. Not any of us do things perfectly, especially when we're younger, and we learn from that, and hopefully we grow from that. Barnabas is not just an encourager. He's not just an introducer and bridging gaps and a go-between, a liaison perhaps between different factions, but he's an advocate. And that's one thing that the Murphy article makes me think about again, and think about in terms of my own work. And then from there, I also think about something that I've read that it was on President Reagan's desk, and I've read that it was also on Harry Truman's desk, this little plaque that said, you can accomplish anything if you don't care who gets the credit. Barnabas seems to me to be that kind of guy. I don't care who gets the credit. He is interested in the work of God, but he's also interested in the individual and their affirmation. Sometimes we get too concerned about who gets the credit, especially if you're working on some of that scholarly research stuff. So the coin of the realm in scholarly circles is publishing or disseminating results or having your name on a grant. And those things, I'm not saying they're not important, because they help feed the academic career, and some of you may go into an academic career. But what's more important, getting your name on this publication or seeing that the work gets done? Is it more important that you are recognized, or is it more important that the work gets done? Whether that be, in my case, an assessment report gets written, or a quality report gets sent to our accreditors. In your case, it might be that the patient recovers, right? Some of our work will be unseen. That's just going to have to be the way it is. That's one thing that this article causes me to reflect on, because as you see, after Paul and Barnabas separate, Barnabas kind of fades from the narrative. He kind of fades from the story. Is it that he's unimportant? No. It's that Luke is a part of the band with Paul. He and Paul are colleagues, and Luke, one of the things he's trying to do is to tell the early church story. Peter and Paul are the two brightest lights that shine there in terms of establishing the Christian church. Is Barnabas important? Absolutely is important, and Luke makes that case. But Paul is the one that he puts at the center of the story. And Barnabas seems to be the kind of guy that's okay with that. I need to be that kind of guy. That's a reflection that I have from reading this article. Thanks.